Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom, and I am so glad that you joined us as we broadcast live from the Heselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Of course, we're going to be talking about New Hampshire. There's a lot to dissect this morning. I do have some other issues, a couple New York State issues, a couple highlights of things to come on Frankly Speaking. So make sure that you stay tuned for the full show. And if you are forced to leave, be careful out there. Okay, so Donald Trump, with 91% of the votes counted, the Associated Press gives him 54.5% of the votes to Nikki Haley's 43.2%. So, beating Nikki Haley by double digits. Some have decided this is the end, that now the former president is the nominee, as a matter of fact, and we're going to get to it in just a moment. That's what Joe Biden is saying, and Joe Biden is also preparing his campaign. It's now, and of course, Nikki Haley has not dropped out, but it is now what you'd call officially one-on-one campaign season, I believe, where they can focus more. And yes, Trump wants Haley to drop out, but they can focus more on each other. And same goes with Biden, because he had a big write-in victory, according to the Associated Press yesterday, with 51.5% of the vote. Dean Phillips receiving nearly 20% of the vote at 19.8%. And then there was some unprocessed write-ins, so they believe that that Joe Biden may gain a little bit there. Marianne Williamson garnering just 4.7%, even though she's been there for a while running for that. So that's a look quickly at the results, if you weren't aware. I'm sure you are by now. But 70%, this is interesting, according to CNN's exit polls. So take it with a grain of salt. Exit polls are kind of notoriously questionable. But 70% of Nikki Haley voters are not registered Republicans. Now, we know that she was going for independents. She was going for the more Democrat-leaning, maybe independents and Republicans. Nikki Haley relied heavily on the support of independents and Democrats in the New Hampshire primary, and yet still lost by a wide margin. Of Haley voters in New Hampshire, CNN reports that about 7 in 10 said they were registered as undeclared prior to Tuesday. 7 in 10. Wow. CNN relied on the exit poll to make its shocking statement. Trump crushed Haley in the New Hampshire primary by double digits, with results still outstanding. The Associated Press called the New Hampshire result, are you ready for this, in 3 minutes. Now, I know when Iowa was declared, what was it, 30 minutes, something like that? In 30 minutes, and we joked with the former Congressman Joe Sempolinski, who was on the program the next morning, that if I would have known, I would have stayed up. You know, I figured it'd be a long night. It was not. Well, even less so last night, 3 minutes. 3 minutes, the Associated Press declared it for Donald Trump. In Iowa, where Trump won by a historic 30%, it took the Associated Press, there it is, 31 minutes to call the race. Wow. So within 3 minutes, we knew the results. Not a lot of pomp and circumstance there with the talking heads, which may be a good thing, though I do have some quote-unquote takeaways from quote-unquote political pundits that we'll be getting to here in just a little bit. Did the results, though, because the only opinions I really care about are yours, did the results surprise you? You see the number on the bottom of your screen? Feel free to reach out at any time. Throw me a wave if you'd like, or comment. I know they were really pushing. I saw it on various outlets that will Trump get over 50%? So you could kind of read the writing on the wall that if he didn't, which of course he did, I want to highlight that. He received, as of now, 54.5%. But that was going to be kind of the bar that was set. Oh no, he's slipping. Haley's making a comeback. You could see where the media wanted to head with this. But again, just like in Iowa, where they were setting the bar at different levels to hopefully persuade people that Nikki Haley had a good night. In Iowa, that did not work because she came in third. New Hampshire, similar, 43.2%. So Donald Trump beating her by double digits and breaking that 50% threshold with 54.5%, which is big because you just need to give the media a little bit to start running with the, Trump's over. How long did we hear about it back in 2016? And throughout his whole presidency, it's done. The walls are closing in. So that did not happen. Now, Nikki Haley has vowed to fight, and we're going to talk about that when we come back. So not the results, by the way. I want to clarify. to continue in the primary. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thank you again for joining us. Tomorrow on the program, I'm excited about this. We're going to be talking with Hornell Mayor John Buckley. John Buckley will be joining us. He was on very early on in the program, and we're glad to have him back. As you may recall, the other day I brought up the article that ranked Hornell number one for affordability in New York and a nice place to live with all the metrics that they use, that it was number one on the list. So we're going to be talking with the mayor about that and a look ahead here in 2024, what to expect, etc. So back to New Hampshire. New Hampshire primary polls exit polls, again, take with a grain of salt, show that voters strongly back Trump on immigration and the economy. As in Iowa, a plurality of New Hampshire GOPers, 42%, considered immigration the most important issue in the 2024 race. And we had that for you yesterday, that the polls nationwide are showing that immigration has topped now the economy, though it is very, very close in voter concern. And Trump won the group that is concerned about immigration by a margin of more than 3-1 over Nikki Haley, 73% to 22%. That's according to Fox News. The former president also bested Haley by double digits, that's 53-40, among the 31% of Granite State voters who said the economy and jobs were the most important issues. Now, as predicted, as we mentioned, Haley did win big among Republicans who describe themselves as independent or Democrat leaning. But again, that doesn't come as a surprise. She really campaigned in that manner for those votes, with the former president even calling that out at certain rallies. But I do find it remarkable that they called the race in 3 minutes. That's 27 minutes faster. No, 28, right? Yeah. They called it 31 minutes in Iowa, and then last night they called it in 3 minutes. Wow. Now, I think we have to have the discussion about, should Haley back out? Now, that's not a political statement in the sense of, is she a viable candidate? Would she make a good president? But when you start, I'm bringing it up from the fact that when you start looking at the money that was spent in attempts to defeat Trump, it's staggering. We're going to talk about it in just a little bit. But that can't be taken away that there's a lot of time and energy being focused right now on the one-on-one, meaning Trump and Haley. When Biden has already signaled, even last night, beginning to sell shirts online, which we'll talk about in just a second, focusing on Trump. He's going to put all his efforts on Trump because he has accepted the fact, in his mind, that the former president is the Republican nominee. But Nikki Haley has said, now, I know you could say, well, didn't Ron DeSantis say this too? But Nikki Haley has vowed to fight. She started by saying, what a great night. God is so good. Thank you, New Hampshire, for the love, the kindness, and support, and a great night here tonight. Thank you so much. I want to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory tonight. He earned it, and I want to acknowledge that. Then she dismissed all of the chatter among the political class, saying that the race is over. They're falling all over themselves, said Nikki Haley, saying that the race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It's not last. There are dozens of states left to go, and the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina. Now, that's a double-edged sword, and that's very interesting because polling shows she is down a lot in her home state. And you have the Tim Scott endorsement, etc. So would it be beneficial for her future plans? And I don't know what her future plans are, if she would maybe want to run again, kind of like a DeSantis. Would it be beneficial for her to continue to go, especially because she's not in Nevada? That's one of those kind of wonky things. She's not in Nevada, so the next chance she has is her home state. She's already, I believe, scheduled to do a rally there tomorrow. So will we see her last till then? Will the donors be there? It's a month away. Will the donors be there? because that's obviously an important part of it. And is it beneficial to her in the long run, or does she take up the mantle, and she may have already done this, of being the never Trump? We are going to make it till at least Super Tuesday. If you remember, Governor Sununu saying that, downplaying expectations, saying we really don't have to win until Super Tuesday, which is not really the best rallying cry to the supporters of Nikki Haley, in my opinion. But she said it was a great night. There are dozens of states left to go, and the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina. One point in this campaign, there were 14 of us running, and we were at 2% in the polls. And now we're the last ones standing next to Donald Trump, and today we got close to half of the vote. We will still have a ways to go, but we keep moving up. I do think that there was an interesting point that someone made, that yes, she is the never Trump candidate or the alternative to Trump, but that apparently is not what Republicans want. So you can throw up the alternate candidate there against Trump, but that doesn't mean that there's a market for it, so to speak. Continuing, she believes a Trump nomination is a Biden win and a Kamala Harris presidency. With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. This court case, that controversy, this tweet, that senior moment. You can't fix Joe Biden's chaos with Republican chaos. Then she later, kind of bizarrely, asserted that the establishment class is against her, despite her campaign previously admitted they are depending on non-conservatives and the establishment class and the kind of moderates. So you've got to play the game, and that's what she's doing, suggesting that everybody's out to get her because of some, I guess, love in the media and the establishment of Donald Trump. Interesting. Do we have to? Yes, I have to take another short break. Stay with us. Oh, thank you. We're getting some waves in here. Thank you very much. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. It is going to be a fast morning, so stay with us. Another beautiful morning here on Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Welcome to Frankly Speaking. Thank you to these viewers who sent in comments, and thank you to everyone who sends in waves. CNN is heavily promoting Haley. If she drops out, they will switch to other countermeasures, and then goes on to call CNN Chaos News Network, which is very appropriate because chaos seems to be the word. Well, chaos and it's not one word, but threat to democracy. Another comment. The political elites won't allow Haley to drop out. They have put all their eggs in her basket. It's a good point. The question of will donors be there? Well, probably. They're playing for Trump not being allowed to run for presidency. It already has shown that Texas isn't allowed to protect its own border. It will all come into play. All very good points. And I heard someone else say that actually yesterday, similar, that, and it wasn't necessarily the same way this viewer sent it in, but saying, well, I think what's ultimately going to happen is Trump will be booted off the ballot or arrested or whatever, and Nikki Haley will be the last one standing, and there'll be no choice. So to that viewer's point, it does seem like that is her kind of her game plan, is to last out and see what happens if the court cases and the challenges and the what some have called an actual threat to democracy, taking them off ballots, if they stick, she would be the last one standing. Now, Nikki Haley's crowd somehow calls Trump a loser after he beat her. With Donald Trump, Haley said, Republicans have lost almost every competitive election. We lost the Senate, we lost the House, we lost the White House. We lost in 2018, we lost in 2020, and we lost in 2022. The worst kept secret in politics is how badly the Democrats want to run against Donald Trump. That's when the crowd started chanting, Trump's a loser, he's a loser. And then Haley continued, they know Trump is the only Republican in the country who Joe Biden can defeat. You can't fix the mess if you don't win an election. A Trump nomination is a Biden win and a Kamala Harris presidency. I defeat Biden handily. That's what the polls have showed. DeSantis did as well, and would have, I should say, and Trump as well. So I'm not really sure. I wouldn't put too much belief in polls, though, because, okay, she can beat Biden, but the name of the game is you got to beat Trump, too. if he's going to continue to win each vote for the nomination. With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. Yes, she is very fond of using the chaos term as well. So Haley supporters, according to the New York Post, actually see last night as a victory. Tonight is a defeat for Donald Trump, John Shaw said, and many in the media were commenting this way too. Big loss for Trump. See, they really wanted him to get under 50%. Then they could have really went all out in that kind of sentiment. Now they have to kind of parse it with, well, if you look at the exit polls, that type of thing, or he's going to lose amongst independents. I think this is fantastic, said David Sully. This is very much the beginning, and there's 48 states more to go, and definitely pushing forward. These are all Haley supporters. It should be taken with a grain of salt. I know technically it's a loss, right? Grace Pekalski said. No one expected that you'd be like this. Now she's got a two-man race. Now she's headed with all this energy behind her. This energy. Interesting. Well, I mean, I understand it. Supporters try ways to convince themselves. But if you think about a normal race, they were within 2-3 points. You're talking double digits here. Trump celebrated, obviously, yesterday. She's going like a speech like she won. She didn't win. She lost. She did very poorly, actually. The governor said she's going to win, she's going to win, she's going to win. Then she failed badly. Yeah, I think they did set a very high bar early on. And the media did too. The media, who I feel as well as that viewer, have been supporting her. And I don't want to keep bringing up this point, but my thoughts. When the media, those in the media that never want to see a Republican win a race for anything ever again, tell Republicans the only way they can win is candidate X, fill in the blank. McCain, Romney, Dole, Jeb Bush at one point, and then it goes to Nikki Haley. So they're pushing that on Nikki Haley, and what they did is I think they set up a scenario where people thought she could actually win New Hampshire, even though, again, the Associated Press called it within 3 minutes, but that she could win it. And then Sununu was pushing that. Then he had to back down, I should say, and say, this is Sununu. No, we just want to have a good showing. And then it was, well, we got to worry about Super Tuesday. That's when you really start winning. Here we go. I wonder if Haley, this is from a viewer, I wonder if Haley would reject a VP offer from Trump. That would be an interesting dynamic for America. Then CNN heads would spin. They sure would. It would be interesting. I don't think that's going to happen. But just the mental mind game here of talking about it, it would be interesting because I don't know how the media would handle that situation. Would it be any worse to take the VP nod than it is to drop out and endorse the former president, as DeSantis did? Because I was talking to somebody the other day, and we might have brought it up on the show as well. Do you think that if Haley drops out, yeah, we brought this up. Do you think if Haley drops out, she endorses Trump? I think she can while saving face, but I don't know at this point if she would be willing to. That's why I don't know if she'd be willing to take the VP nod, though she does seem to have ambitions, right? And that's not always a negative thing. She has ambitions. So would that play into her ultimate, I guess, for lack of a better word, life goals? I don't know, these are just fun games. That's why we have these conversations on the program. Haley, this is from another viewer, Haley is only losing by 50 points in her own home state of South Carolina. Yeah, that's a good point. They won't be able to use pawns like in New Hampshire to make it appear closer. Enough said. Yeah, I don't know what the actual number is. I don't know. It may actually be around 50%. I saw the number earlier, and numbers don't always stick that well with me. But I probably somewhere in my stack of paperwork here, we will get to that at some point. But I know that she is down significantly in her home state. And that's why I wonder if she were to drop out, boy, I would want to do it before you lose your home state badly, because that doesn't give you any momentum going into Super Tuesday either. That's just an embarrassment, and you're staying on too long with no delegates at that point, because, of course, she's not in Nevada, as we've mentioned. So, yes, Trump celebrating yesterday. We'll get away from that kind of discussion because I want to get into more of the nitty-gritty. Biden says it is now clear Trump will be the GOP nominee, saying It's now clear that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. And my message to the country, what do you think was his message, if you had to guess? And my message to the country is the stakes could not be higher. Why is that, Joe? Our democracy, our personal freedoms, from the right to choose to the right to vote, our economy, which has been the strongest recovery in the world since COVID, are all at stake. Dean Phillips congratulated Joe Biden, even though he got around 20%. That's not horrible. We earned 20% tonight, and no one knew who we were 10 weeks ago. Nobody, he said. Congratulations to President Biden, who absolutely won tonight, but by no means in a way that a strong incumbent president should. And I think that's a good point. They're saying it was a dominant win. Now, there is something to be said there because it was a write-in campaign that he did so well on. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was dominating. It's interesting when Trump beat somebody by double digits, by so many points in Iowa, by so many in New Hampshire, and it's a loss for the president, not what he wanted. But with Biden, it is, as an incumbent president, the president of the United States, losing to a relative, not losing, but losing 20% of the vote to a relative nobody. I mean, I don't think anybody that we knew before, really during this campaign. I want to celebrate, he continued, this is Dean Phillips. I want to celebrate Nikki Haley for the tenacity she has to stay in this race and still try to take Trump down, because I think we need to. So the idea there is, come on, Nikki, stick it out. Come on, we need you. Senator Cornyn, how am I doing on time? Man, I'm going to run late this morning. We're going to get to some endorsements. We're going to talk a little bit about Biden's campaign. We do have other issues. I don't want to just focus on New Hampshire. We do have other issues. But I love that we're getting some comments in. Keep them coming. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Text, leave a voicemail, wave, whatever's best for you. We got a wave on the street this morning. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking, receiving another message from a viewer this morning. The Trump quote-unquote chaos, and that's a term that they use a lot, Nikki Haley has been using it, is predominantly caused by the Democrat-run media and deep state that fear him. Prior to political involvement, the media loved him, and they made lots of money off of his branding. Thank you for that comment. Okay, and I do think that's what a lot of people that, Republicans specifically, that don't want to vote for Trump, it's interesting because a lot of times their reasoning is they don't want all that constant quote-unquote chaos. But a lot of times that is just the media and their 24/7 coverage of everything they deem a scandal or everything they can attack him on. It's very interesting. Senator Cornyn said, "I've seen enough to beat Biden. Republicans need to unite around a single candidate, and it's clear that President Trump is Republican voters' choice." Did you realize, yes, there's a lot of people calling for the unification at this point, to unify as one person, get behind him and start the general election campaign. Do you realize that Nikki Haley spent $31 million in losing New Hampshire by double digits? You had pro-Haley spending $31 million. And this is coming from CNN. I mean, this is remarkable. Also, if you do it overall, Republican presidential contenders spent over $167 million in losing efforts to defeat former President Donald Trump in New Hampshire and Iowa. New Hampshire and Iowa, $167 million. And there's plans to spend more, I'm sure, with Nikki Haley. That is amazing. According to CNN, campaign officials are concerned that if Haley does not drop out after New Hampshire, it would force them to spend resources against her in South Carolina for the next 3 weeks instead of turning to states where Trump is politically vulnerable. So that's Biden's people. Just very interesting. Speaker Johnson, Mike Johnson, said congratulations to President Trump on his decisive victory tonight in America's first in the nation primary. Our House Republican leaders and a majority of Republican senators support his reelection, and Republican voters in Iowa and New Hampshire have strongly backed him at the polls. It's now past time for the Republican Party to unite around Donald Trump so we can focus on ending the disastrous Biden presidency and growing our majority in Congress. Yeah, when you start talking about that kind of money, $167 million in New Hampshire and Iowa just to defeat president. It's time, the former president. It's time to move on. Now we've got to take a look at. Okay, I'm doing good. Kind of the 5 takeaways from, we'll look at Fox first, then CNN, because it's best to know where all sides are coming from. One, from Fox News, Haley vows that the GOP race is far from over. Yes, that is a takeaway, but again, and I do actually think she'll probably stay in because she is, to that viewer's point, trying to maybe outlast the former president in the sense of court cases and maybe being booted off the ballot, those type of things. But I also think the establishment, the kind of the elites, the moderates, even the Democrats want her in there so badly as an alternative. The money probably will continue to come in. But again, you can look at the other side of it where DeSantis vowed to fight on after Iowa and dropped out just days later. Number 2, Trump declares Republican Party very united around his candidacy. Number 3, Biden pulls off massive write-in victory after not appearing on the ballot. That's been the talk of a lot of outlets. 4, more big-name Republicans turn on Haley with calls to drop out of the race. Well, they're looking at the money being spent. Ronna McDaniel from the RNC said, looking at the math and the path forward, I don't see it for Nikki Haley. I think she's run a great campaign, but I do think there is a message that's coming out from voters which is very clear. We need to unite around our eventual nominee, which is going to be Donald Trump, and we need to make sure we beat Joe Biden. And that's what most are saying. Rubio even almost picking on Haley, saying, why, your donors are just losing way too much money at this point. But we've got to focus the money, the attention on the general election is kind of the mindset of asking her to drop out before Super Tuesday, before South Carolina, because Joe Biden has started essentially his campaign. Number 5, record number of voters turn out for the Republican primary. Interesting, because last time they were saying low turnout. Isn't it amazing how political cycles work? I think it was Drudge Report that had it after Iowa. Just no excitement, low turnout, just horrible, dismal turnout. Such a bad sign for the former president. Now, the New Hampshire Republican primary saw a record turnout on Tuesday, despite some reports that low energy among voters would depress the vote. With approximately 92% of the vote counted, more than 293,000 ballots have been cast compared to just over 101,000, with approximately 88% of the vote counted in the Democrat primary. So yes, there's excitement. The media's got to spin everything. Now let's take a look at the other side of the coin in a way. CNN, their 5 takeaways. Trump wants Haley out now. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that takes a brilliant political mind. Does it? Then, Haley says GOP race is far from over, so that's similar there. Now, CNN says what's not clear, though, is where Haley would actually notch a victory against Trump. She isn't participating in the Nevada caucus on February 8th. She will instead be on the state's primary ballot, which won't lead her to winning any delegates. And polls in her home state of South Carolina, where the February 24th primary will be the next major showdown, shows Trump with a huge lead, which is just such an embarrassment. I've got to say that if she ends up losing that. Now, Haley's campaign said Tuesday it is placing a $4 million television advertising buy in South Carolina. She's also scheduled for a rally there tonight, actually. Mark Harris, executive director of the pro-Haley Super PAC, told CNN the group is on to South Carolina and plans to spend millions on ads, on mail, and on more. Next, Haley's argument, Trump is a loser. We mentioned that earlier. Now, here we go. This is where CNN, we have other examples of this. This is where CNN has to start spinning it. Warning signs for Trump. Though Trump's win was a huge step towards cementing the nomination, there were warning signs for his general election hopes within CNN's exit polls. Haley won the 29% of the electorate that identifies themselves as moderate by a 3-1 margin. Okay. Well, that's who she was campaigning with, for those votes, being a moderate for Democrat-leaning Republicans. And now, this is why I mentioned it, Biden's general election bid takes shape. So he's on to the general election, accepting the fact or assuming the fact that it is going to be Donald Trump. Even selling shirts starting last night. Together, we will defeat Trump again. And to emphasize again, it's in red. That $32 shirt, yes, $32 shirt, is the Biden campaign's first merchandise of 2024, referencing Trump. They're also selling stickers featuring the same words. So together, we will defeat Trump again. That's the campaign starting. That's the signal. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We're back and we are running late this morning. We've covered so much. Thank you to everybody who had joined us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. This is Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We received a comment from a viewer that said, why pay for the Biden shirt? You can get one for free by crossing the border. To that point, there's a piece this morning that was linked, I believe, on Drudge Report. And the title is, They're Black Democrats and They're Suing Chicago Over Migrants. The migrant issue is going to be a major, major issue come November. Not just for the presidential race, but for congressional races, senatorial, perhaps gubernatorial. But the reason I mention this piece is, it says, the city greets new arrivals with resources like health screenings and rent support. Quote, they're giving migrants all the things we've been asking for since we came here in chains, end quote. The piece is by Olivia Reingold. It's pretty interesting to see how many are turning against what it was typically, Democrats turning against Democrats. And if you look at the issue nationwide, as I mentioned on the program the other day and mentioned so far this morning, that immigration has topped voters' concerns, even more so than the economy. By the way, a couple quick updates before we go. We're not going to just focus on New Hampshire. There's a couple things I want to get to at the end, but I wanted to tell you, because I know many of you have been following this closely, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be on the New Hampshire ballot. They were out campaigning yesterday to get signatures. Under New Hampshire's law, candidates who wish to run for president from a third party must submit nomination papers with the signatures of at least 3,000 registered voters, 1,500 from each of the Granite State's 2 congressional districts. Now, RFK Jr. is currently confirmed for the ballot in only one state, Utah, but his campaign has said it intends to appear in all 50 states and the District of Columbia on November the 5th. So the Bobby on the ballot campaign worked. One last comment. Biden's top White House advisor will be, I wonder if I have this. Yes, here we go. There she is to the right. Biden's top White House advisor will move to the campaign. Biden's 2020 campaign manager, Jen O'Malley Dillon, will transition to his re-election efforts as campaign chair, according to a senior Biden advisor. O'Malley Dillon has served as White House Deputy Chief of Staff since Biden's inauguration. I just mentioned that. It is interesting that because they've assumed, and probably rightfully so, that I would think that Trump's going to be the nominee, Biden can now campaign as it were a general election, not have to focus on a Haley or a DeSantis or whatever, where right now so many are calling for Haley to drop out because they see that Trump will be forced to continue to campaign against her instead of focusing on the general. But we've got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. So, as we know, even if you're just joining us, Donald Trump defeated Nikki Haley 54.5% to 43.2%. But according to Lawrence O'Donnell, it was a very bad night for Donald Trump. He was on MSNBC. So Joe Biden demonstrates enormous strength in New Hampshire tonight. And now, keep in mind, the incumbent president, the president of the United States, still lost 20% of the vote to Dean Phillips. So Dean Phillips getting 20% of the vote. Still worth noting. But Joe Biden demonstrates enormous strength in New Hampshire tonight. Then you have Trump showing much greater weakness against a credible challenger, winning by double digits. It depends on how you want to look at Trump. He wants to be called president in court and everywhere. So let's call him president just for this moment. When a president is on the ballot in the New Hampshire primary, you are supposed to win everything. You're not supposed to face a serious challenger. And when you do, you lose. There's no president who faced a serious challenge in the New Hampshire primary who won in November. So this is a very bad night for Donald Trump. So what O'Donnell is saying here, he would have lost no matter what. There was no way in O'Donnell's mind that Trump would have had a winning night because he had an opponent. Okay. Looking at the pattern of presidents in the New Hampshire primary situations who face very serious challengers. I know we talk about the media a lot, but, well, let's look at it. Do I have a minute? I'm going to go through these fast, but it's CNN puts together, then we're going to get away from New Hampshire. They put together their pundits to just say a little bit of a piece about what happened last night. Raul Rees said Nikki Haley's identity crisis, meaning that, she's a never Trump kind of GOP candidate, but the problem is she's running on some issues that are very similar to the former president. You've got S.E. Cupp, in full disclosure, interviewed her on my program years ago. She went to Ithaca. Haley should keep fighting for all the Americans who don't want Trump. S.E. Cupp became a very anti-Trump person. For independents, moderates, and disaffected Republicans, Haley represents an all too important candidate in this race, the woman standing between Trump and the White House. For everyone, including the Biden campaign, declaring this race over, she owes it to those voters who stay in and not succumb to Trump's inevitability posturing or Biden's eagerness to face a weaker candidate. She's earning votes to stop Trump, and that's what she must continue to do. Let me ask, do you think that Haley is a stronger candidate than Trump? This is a very serious question. Or do you think, like S.E. Cupp does, that Nikki Haley is a stronger opponent against Joe Biden? Again, you've got to remember who are saying these things. It's important. Paul Bella says the disaster looming for Trump. How could we have gotten away from headlines like that? How much does it take Trump to win by? 100%? Before you don't have headlines like the disaster looming for Trump? I'm just curious. I don't know what that number is. Double digits. He got over 50, which was the bar that they were setting, hoping that he wouldn't. What else do we have? Jamal Simmons said Biden's write-in victory shows he's passing the test. Instead, Democrats are wrestling with whether an 81-year-old Biden is up to the job. Tuesday night in New Hampshire, we had the first answer to that question. It appears Biden is passing that test. Daniel McCarthy raising a good point that Haley faces more humiliating losses if she stays in the race, hurting her potential future, in my opinion. How about this one? I didn't expect this headline. Rizwan Virk said Marianne Williamson, the Democrat, could have been what Democrats needed. She should have been given a chance. Interesting. Sophia Nelson, again, all of these from CNN. Most of the fellas in the race back Trump. That was a mistake with women. We've got to take another short break. We're going to wrap things up here. I might have one or two quick things to mention, but then we're going to go to some other topics. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. We'll be right back. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We have a comment here from a viewer. I don't see Haley as a winner, and that is to my question of, do you think, as S.E. Cupp does, that Haley's a stronger candidate than Trump in the general? So I don't see Haley as a winner, only as a spoiler and a Democratic tool. To that point about being a Democratic tool, that's what scares me about the people supporting her, the people commenting on her, promoting her, like the CNNs of the world, people that never want to see a Republican win, telling us that that's the only way Republicans can win. But anyway, John Bolton, the former U.S. National Security Advisor, John Bolton, Dennis Miller, the comedian, used to call him the nuclear walrus, and you would know what that means if you know what John Bolton looks like. He says, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump or Biden. I'm afraid Trump could win. I'm not going to vote for Trump or Biden if those are the nominees. I didn't in 2020, and I won't this time either. So he fears for the way things are headed, but decides to sit out the presidential vote. Okay. Michael Goodwin has a piece. If you get a chance, it's too long. We're out of time. I got to take another break, and then we're going to wrap up on some other issues. But Michael Goodwin at the Post has Teflon Don shows his durability. And it's a really good piece. And it goes on to talk about how, the media's attacked him, the quote-unquote deep states attacked him. But he said he was and is, this is about Biden, he was and is quite simply a terrible president, arguably the worst ever. From his bumbling, befuddled appearances to his enormous policy failures that are helping spark domestic and global tensions, he's managed to boost the case for the man he had soundly defeated, meaning helping the case for Trump. Because many of Biden's key failures are in areas where Trump had succeeded, including the economy, controlling inflation, and achieving border security and peace abroad, voters have a handy comparison that tilts in Trump's favor. One result is that while Trump's train is gaining momentum, polls show that a majority of voters in Biden's own party don't want him to seek a second term. His choice of Kamala Harris for vice president has further weakened him because of the likelihood he would not make it through an additional 4 more years, and nobody wants her to be president. So here we are, a full 10 months before Election Day, and Nikki Haley is all that stands between a 2020 rematch. If she falters and if Trump keeps his focus and his cool, he could put Biden's record on trial and make the incumbent play defense. All else being equal, that's a huge advantage. And that's why people want him to be able to have Nikki Haley drop out and be able to focus on that, campaign on that. We've got to take our last break. Then we're going to wrap things up. Stay with us. It's going to be great. Boy, this show went fast. Thank you so much for joining us on Frankly Speaking. There's a great piece by Betsy McKay at the New York Post. Democrats letting migrants fly without ID are playing Russian roulette with our safety. We learned that Joe Biden's new Customs and Border Protection One app allows those to fly, migrants to fly, without a photo ID. Imagine if you went to the TSA and said, sorry, I don't have a photo ID. So the only thing that really needs to be done is they need to take a photo. Now, then the sign says photo capture is voluntary. So as Betsy McKay says at the end of her piece, allowing migrants or anyone to board airplanes without photo ID and promoting ID cards that blur the lines between legal and illegal sabotage us. Don't let Biden and the hard left play Russian roulette with our lives. Remember 9/11. Okay, the last thing. Oh, my goodness. Cindy Adams is predicting that Barack Obama may be the next president of Harvard. Last week, the Harvard presidency job was offered to Obama, according to Cindy Adams. He deferred the suggestion. Didn't outright reject it. Deferred. Interesting. All right, here's a couple New York State issues. Some New York farmers have been forced to cut hours for their workers amid the overtime changes that we talked about on this program. Farm workers say they are upset with changes that went into effect on January 1st that moved the overtime threshold in New York State down from 60 to 56 hours. The rule means farmers have to start paying overtime after 56 hours worked. Farmers are eligible to apply for a tax credit to offset what they pay their workers, but 3 upstate farms said they are still cutting hours. It's led to confusion and anger over lost wages among their workers. And how about this? I was not aware of this, but under new laws, New Yorkers would be able to possess up to 5 pounds of recreational marijuana that they've grown at their home under a new proposal. The New York Office of Cannabis Management on Tuesday revealed a set of proposed regulations for growing recreational marijuana at home. It is currently illegal in New York to grow marijuana plants at home for recreational use until regulations have been established. Under the proposed rule, New Yorkers who are at least 21 years old would be allowed to possess up to 5 pounds of cannabis flower trimmed from plants they've grown at home. Wow. What point does recreational maybe not the right word to use? 5 pounds. We are out of time. Thank you everybody who joined us. Tomorrow on the program, we'll be talking with Hornell Mayor John Buckley. So don't miss that. Also, just to highlight something coming up because we've been talking about it, we're going to have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano back on the program. That is next Friday, so mark your calendar. Have a great day, everyone, and join us weekday morning starting at 7 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone.